And 72% of the time the market goes up. And the answer came to me. And that's when I developed my chart. The answer came to me is because, just like Caterpillar, when they pull their money out, you get out. Whoa.
It's your daily dose of how to manage your money. And now it's time for Phil's Gang on the Off the Wall Street Network.
Oh, God. I get nuts.
With your host, Phil Grande.
Good afternoon, gang, and thank you for joining me in my podcast today. Okay, one thing before I begin, I don't know if you are, but I'm just so tired of hearing every weekend they're bombing and hitting the guard, and I just don't understand how they think they can have peace with Iran when the guard won't make a decision or will not surrender, will not give up. I mean, the guard is everything. And we keep dealing with the wrong people. We're dealing with these mediators, a Pakistani leader, and he's a mediator between us and Iran. And then I think there's another one from Dubai, I'm not sure. But we don't deal directly with Iran. So we deal with these mediators who deal with Iran, who are dealing with the private sector, the government of Iran. It's, like they have a president, they have, a vice president, they have the same, all that sort of thing. But they have no authority. The authority comes from the guard. They make all decisions. And they don't want this thing to end. So it just gets me to think, why don't they just go in and get rid of the guard, the army? And that'd be the end of it. That's the only thing that's keeping this thing alive, because they pay no attention to the officials, the private government will say of Iran, or the people who are running it, the president and so forth. Nobody pays attention to them. When I say nobody, I mean the army doesn't, the guard doesn't. So it just makes no sense. And it was really worrying me about the market is that because we keep dealing with people who can't get to the people to make decisions, you've got to have a deal between the president of our country and the four generals who run this guard, okay? That's like, was the Nazis SS. This was the leaders over there, his SS. And they're brutal. So unless our president can get together with those leaders, there will be no deal. This is all smoke and mirrors. This is all to keep gasoline down. I believe, I could be wrong, until after the midterms, because the people we are negotiating with in Pakistan, and I know it's not Dubai, I can't think of the other country, but the two countries that are between us and Iran doing negotiating, they are not negotiating with the guard. Unless you can control the guard, there's nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to stick. No promises are going to stick. I believe what's going on is the president is trying to keep the gasoline price, oil down, to have gasoline price down up to that election. I don't blame him for doing that. And then I hope after the midterm election, he goes and he cleans out the cancer, puts boots on the ground. Because if he doesn't, this whole thing's going to blow up again. And oil's going to go right back up to $150 a barrel. And that's what really scares me about the market. What could take the market down? I mean, that would really, if people are sitting back, think, oh, well, there's a deal, and look at this, gasoline's under $4, food's coming down. That's just an illusion. It's not going to stick. We're not making a contract with the people we should be making a contract with. You can't make a contract with the guard. It's impossible. These people are insane. They're religious zealots that are just crazy people. So unless we get our boots on the ground and wipe them out, the people of Iran aren't going to have a chance. And the market is always going to be hanging by a thread. And I want to talk about the market. Why is it the market never seems to crash? And that's the theme of my podcast today. And I thought I'd go over that because most people don't know how the market works. But the market, if you think about what happened, on Friday, we had a rally. And it was a relief rally where they were saying, oh, God, Wall Street was saying, gee, this is wonderful. This could have been much worse this week. It was not as bad as we thought. So they decided to have a relief rally. That was what you saw on Friday. This morning you wake up and the pre-market's green, and it's, oh, we're going to have this relief rally. It's going to continue, and all the economy stocks are going to go up. You know, your industrials, your materials, your transports, financials, those are going to continue to lead like they did on Friday. Well, I warned, and I said, no, I don't think so, because the 2-year Treasury, which is the most important treasury in the United States, the yield, was telling us, wait a minute, on Friday when we had this rally, the TV jibber jabbers, when I say the 2-year yield was telling us, in other words, the yield wasn't dropping enough to create a rally in the industrials. So I said the 2-year yield doesn't agree with this feel-good rally, because what the TV jibber jabbers at Wall Street hid from everybody was what was behind this rally that started on Friday. It was hedge funds. Now, if most people don't know, the hedge funds, they have to buy when they don't have enough stocks. They don't have a choice. It's their mandate. It's their rules. They have no choice. Hedge funds have to buy when they are underweight stocks, because their job is to beat the market, not to match it. Their job is to outperform, not sit on this cash. Well, this is what happened on Friday. The timing was just perfect where the hedge funds started to buy. They didn't want to buy. They didn't say this was a great deal of the market. No, not at all. But they had to. They're mandated to. It's the way Wall Street works. So that's why the market started to rally. So, and then when they said this morning when the market, pre-market was up, everyone said, oh, the industrial stocks are going to continue to go up. And as I said, the 2-year yield is telling us, no, it's not going to happen. And sure enough, it was a perfect setup for the tech stocks, because yields stopped rising. And of course, the favorite tech stocks, okay, I mean, yields were, the 2-year was a 4.11, 10-year 4.37. That was a perfect setup for everybody to bail out of these tech stocks, and they started, bail out these other stocks and go back into the tech market. And that's what happened. It was a perfect setup for a tech rally. And everybody ran to, guess what? The best stocks, the chip machine makers. And AMAT and CLAC broke out. LRCX is ready to break out. ASML is ready to break out. The 2-year yield didn't drop quite enough for them to have a big breakout, but that's where the money went. So money rotated out of the economy stocks like financials and moved over to the chip machine makers. And the chip machine buyers are the infrastructure stocks. So the problem, though, the chip makers, the machine buyers and the infrastructure stocks, they're not doing well because, again, yields are not low enough. So we had this little pop today in tech stocks, just that one group. And again, these mega cap stocks, snap back big today, but it's a trap. You got to be very careful. When you see these stocks in a severe downtrend here, I'll just show you one, for example. Take Tesla. Okay, you can take a look at my chart here. And take Tesla, for example. If you look at Tesla, look what happened today. The stock went from $380 up to $412. But wait a minute, it's not going to hold. Why? Because see the severe downtrend? This is a downtrend, and this shows it's a downtrend. That means money's coming out. So shorts covered. That's all that happened. Okay, they went in and covered their short position. Anytime you get a big, bold move like this, you sell into it because it's not going to hold. It'll come right back down. It always follows this trend. So if you look at any of the stocks, now we're in a lot of these stocks, like the machine makers, like take AMAT, that broke out nice today. But remember, all these stocks, they still need lower yields. You got to get that yield down. You got to get that 2-year down, 2-year yield lower and a 10-year lower for this to continue. But these are the top stocks. CLAC, look how much our CLAC moved today. Big breakout today in CLAC. So that's what happened. That's why you can't listen to these jibber jabbers. If you start listening to these jibber jabbers, it's just you're going to go the wrong way, and you're always going to lose money every time. So one of the everybody asked. Let me just, I guess, got a couple of notes I wanted to go over with you here. Everybody asked about why doesn't the market ever crash? I get that a lot. Why doesn't the market crash, man? I mean, and I always say, hell, crash. What about getting at least a 10% correction? That doesn't even happen anymore. We used to get those quite a few during each year, each calendar year, but it doesn't. But the reason the market will not crash is because yields are too stable. And these mega cap stocks, the big mega cap stocks, which are your Magnificent Seven stocks and a couple others, are too strong. And the liquidity is still high. And what does that mean, liquidity is still high? This is the key. The Federal Reserve, it's not like they're printing money, okay, to give to the banks, but they sell a ton of treasuries. They keep selling treasuries so that they're very liquid and they can keep on giving money to these big tech companies, to the big banks. So for years, they've been, again, providing all this liquid to the market, and at zero rates since 2008 to 2022. That's what blew this whole market up and why the market doesn't crash. So in other words, the market won't crash because, one, yields are stable, and these mega caps are too strong. Those are the Magnificent Seven. And the liquidity, the money they provide to the banks, to the big companies, there's so much money they provide to them. And when they provided that money and the interest rates were at zero or near zero from 2008 to 2022, free money, that was insane. So they had, yields were stable. There was no credit stress. They weren't under credit stress. They didn't have to worry about getting money, so you don't get a crash. A crash requires exploding yields. Our yields are too low. And you have to blow out the credit spreads. That's not happening. And funding markets have to freeze. That's not happening. You have to have forced selling. That's not happening. None of that is happening because we have these mega caps, because they have all this liquidity. The liquidity's safe. And from 2008 to 2022, near zero interest rates, that money's still in the system. And the liquidity, remember, the Fed keeps making sure that liquidity, that plumbing doesn't get clogged, which means banks have plenty of money, cash, hedge funds. They make sure they have enough cash. Repo markets have plenty of cash and it's running smoothly. Credit spreads stay nice and tight. I mean, look at our yield curve right now. Yield curve is, we're it's terrible. But the credit spreads are tight. And again, remember on the credit spreads, the credit spreads, remember, are different than the yield curve. The credit spread shows you if the banks are safe. Now, in 2008, when the market crashed, the credit spreads were telling you the banks were not safe. So I'm going to take a little more extra time and finish this because this is very important. People always ask, why can't this market crash, for God's sakes? And I always say, never mind a crash, we can't even get a 10% correction because the Federal Reserve, Treasury, they keep providing so much money that they make sure that banks have a ton of money. Not like what happened in 2008. They make sure the hedge funds have a ton of cash. The repo markets have plenty of money. That's when they go at night and all the banks get together at night and one bank needs money and so one bank will give them money. They got to pay them back the next day. So all the banks go to get money at night so they go up to their doors the next day. And credit spreads stay tight. And so nobody's forced to sell. Why would anybody be forced to sell if the plan is always to make sure that we provide enough cash? I'm not talking about printing money. I'm talking about just keep on selling treasuries, and all this money comes in. And of course, every day we're short $5 billion a day. That's right. Every day we can't pay our bills. So we sell more treasuries. Now we're selling 2-year treasuries. And the more 2-year treasuries we sell, then that yield goes down and the market's not going to crash. So they financially engineered this market from 2008 to 2022 with free money. And then from 2022 to where we are now, there is so much money, so much liquidity in the system, you can't get a crash. That's how the system works. So, and how the Fed keeps liquidity as high as they do, repo operations is the big thing. Fed lends ton of cash overnight. So the banks, remember at the end of the day, the banks have lent all their money out. So the banks sit around and they need money. So the banks, one bank will loan another bank, and then the next day they pay them back. So to get the doors open in the morning, a crash will happen when that doesn't occur, when all of a sudden one bank, two banks, they can't open their doors in the morning, they don't have any money, and there's not enough liquidity in the system to take care of it. Well, because we are selling so many treasuries, crazy, which is killing us, which is killing our economy, with all these treasuries we're selling, because our deficits get deeper and bigger and bigger and bigger. So the repo operation are loaded with cash, so that we're not going to get a crash there. Interest on reserves, controls how fast money moves. If you think of a pool of money of 57 trillion, this one big pool that all the big big institutions have, and think of that as a pool, and you got pipes going out of that pool to tech stocks, if you want to buy healthcare stocks, you want to buy home builders, and the money flows out fast to those to buy tech or to buy home builders or buy healthcare, all the stocks you want to buy. As long as that money is flowing fast, it keeps everything going, well. And that's what's going on. So this whole thing is a big house of cards. There's so much liquidity for the wrong reasons. It started 2008 to 2022 with all the printing of money at zero interest rates. So that corporations could borrow money at zero interest rates. Banks could borrow money. Hedge funds at zero interest rates. Everybody zero interest rate all these years. And now there's still so much money around that the repo operations run smoothly. The reverse repo operations run smoothly. Interest on reserves controls how fast money moves out of those pipelines. And when the pipelines clog up and money doesn't move fast from that lake to buy, let's say, tech stocks or housing stocks, when it doesn't move fast, it's because interest rates are too high and it clogs everything up. We don't have that. That's one way you get a crash or you get a correction. We don't get that. The discount window, emergency cash for banks. They got so much cash at the emergency window, there's no panic. So it just keeps the pipelines going to stocks from the lake nice and clean, and as long as rates stay low, money will go through those pipelines, and it's called a footprint. You can tell what stocks institutions are buying by following its footprint. You know exactly that pool of lake, which, by the way, they don't use all 57 billion. They only use, they use about, 57 trillion. They only use about 10 trillion. It's always in the market. But they pulled that back now. There's only 2 trillion in the market, and they're not using that 2 trillion in the market to buy stocks anymore. Computers have taken the place of institutions because institutions don't want to come into the stock market because the yield curve is so far away from the 150, so it makes it dangerous. But again, now if you go back to now that you know all these pipes, as long as they stay unclogged, and they do that with keeping interest rates low enough so the money goes through those pipes from the big lake. And then you got the mega cap techs. They're just too strong. Tesla was up today, 8.5%? Now, it was a snapback. It's not going to hold, but that's not the point. I'll give you, and we'll finish this up. If you take the biggest mega caps, you take NVIDIA, AVGO, Microsoft, Apple, Meta, Google, AVGO is Broadcom. These stocks are so huge, they act like index gravity. As long as they are green, they are stable, they keep attracting flows, the market can't crash. That's why the market doesn't crash. And liquidity is still high. There's no forced selling. And remember, what high liquidity means, banks have cash, hedge funds have cash, dealers have cash, repo markets are running smoothly, credit spreads are tight. So when liquidity is high, nobody's forced to sell their stocks. That's why we don't have a crash or a correction anymore. We don't even get corrections anymore, for God's sakes. 48% of the calendar years historically, corrections of 10% always occurred. 48% of each year. In the last 10 years, 2016, 2026, we've had far fewer 10% corrections than ever. We have almost none. 2022 bear market, remember that 10 to 25% drop. Early 2026, we had a correction, 10%. That was during this Middle East Iran conflict with closing the strait and all that. So again, when you say why doesn't the market crash, there's too much liquidity, and how that happened, it started in 2008 through financial engineering. From 2008 to 2022, everybody said, well, it stopped in from 2008 to 2012. No, QE stopped. This is where people misunderstand. QE stopped. but not making sure the liquidity didn't stop. QE stopped. QE stopped. Remember, QE is where you went and printed all this money, the Treasury, and then the Fed went in and bought all these 10-year Treasuries, get the yields down, so people would come in and buy stocks. Remember 2008, 2009, 2000, the market kept going up and up and up. That's how that works. So if anybody wants to know why doesn't the market ever crash with all this crazy stuff going on, because of the liquidity. Every key player from the banks to repo, we've never seen anything like this before. You have so much cash. So what's it doing? It's building a humongous bubble. One day it will crash, okay? One day it will crash. But, I mean, unbelievable. If you just take the last 7 years, I mean, how much cash has gone into these things. It's just incredible. So that's the deal. Okay, it doesn't mean you're not going to get corrections. It doesn't mean you're not going to get a crash. But everybody's crash. We're going to get one day, and it's going to be huge. I mean, it's going to be so huge. Okay, it's going to be bigger than the .com and all the others put together, because this thing has just been put off. It's like having you have a cavity, and then you just don't take care of it. It keeps going, and all of a sudden they got to pull this thing out. So anyway, so that's why the market has not crashed. That's why we don't get good corrections, 10% corrections anymore, because always remember 2008, 2022, the liquidity that was created is still there, and no one has to be forced to sell anything. Remember all the years, there was zero interest rates, 12 years. No, people bought money for zero. The banks, everybody else, zero. But it'll happen at one point. But in the meantime, we're going to have a lot of different swings, and you got to learn how to follow the money to find out what stocks you should really be in. That's the key. In this kind of a market full of liquidity like this, that you're not getting corrections or crash, okay, you've got to follow the money. Turn your TV off. Don't listen to the TV jibber jabbers. Learn how to follow the money and learn how to sell short. Okay, anyways, I wanted to answer that question. I hope I didn't confuse you, but that's the main reason why the market doesn't crash. Will it crash? Oh yeah, it will. And always remember this, you'll know when it's going to crash when the three-year, okay, Treasury that rate drops below the 2-year. That's the best signal ever, and it never fails you, okay? All right, I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you come back tomorrow, same time, same place. See you on the charts, philsgang.com. Sign up.
Are you nuts?